All right, so what is the Great Schism and what long-term effect has it had on modern society? And away we go. All right, I will give you a second here. All right, so to tell the story of why this split in the church happens, we need to talk about some of the politics of the area at the time. So this is the 700s Common Era, and power is kind of in flux. This is the end of the Roman Empire, right? The rise of the Byzantine Empire, the western part of the Roman Empire, what was the Roman Empire, is kind of in this state of flux. So there's the Frankish kingdom in the west, and we will talk about them next unit. And in the east, there's the Islamic Empire, and the Islamic Empire is starting to encroach on lands that used to be Christian. And the Islamic Empire brings with them Islam, obviously. So the Pope, who's really just the Bishop of Rome, feels threatened by the Islamic Empire. So he's going to have to take certain measures to try to kind of ward off the Islamic Empire from encroaching on Christian territory. So when we look at the map, you can see the green is the Byzantine Empire here, and the purple is the Islamic Empire. So you can see how they're kind of surrounded on all sides here, right? And the Frankish kingdom that we mentioned is here in red. So you can see that, you know, the Islamic Empire is huge, and it is pushing right up against that Byzantine Empire, which is definitely Christian. All right, I will pause a second here. So, as a measure of protection, what the Pope does now, Christianity doesn't necessarily have an army, at least not yet, kind of, sort of, and we'll talk about that later. But you know, the Pope in Rome needs some kind of protection against the Islamic Empire, which certainly does have a military, right? So what he does is he crowns this guy Charlemagne, and we will talk about him later, Holy Roman Emperor. And the idea is that, okay, Charlemagne, you be the Holy Roman Emperor, and you rule over all of this kind of territory that used to be the Roman Empire in the West. And in return, you will protect all of us from the Islamic Empire. Well, the problem is that the emperor of the Byzantine Empire already sees himself as Roman emperor. And now, when we study this in history, we look back and we call it the Byzantine Empire. But to be honest, the term Byzantine Empire is not even really used until much, much later, 1500s or something like that. So at the time that this is happening, the Byzantine Empire still sees itself as the Roman Empire. So now we have a problem. The Pope is crowning Charlemagne Holy Roman Emperor, but the emperor in the Byzantine Empire, what is now the Byzantine Empire, sees himself as Roman Emperor. So it's like, what's going on here? And this kind of is a point of contention. The other part of this is that the bishop in Rome, the Pope, he sees himself as having authority over all other bishops. Because Rome has become kind of the seat of Christian power and like the home base of Christianity, the Bishop of Rome starts acting as though he has authority over all other bishops in other, dioceses around the world. Well, no one ever said this, so the Pope tries to start asserting authority over Greek-speaking churches in the Byzantine territory, and this is a problem. The idea traditionally is that all the bishops who are kind of the leader of that little territory of Christianity, all of the bishops are kind of equal in power. And now the Bishop of Rome, aka the Pope, is starting to act as though he is above all of them. And this kind of strikes a nerve with the Byzantine bishops. They feel like they're all on equal ground and they shouldn't have to take orders from the bishop in Rome. They have their own bishops. So we have a couple things at work here. The political part is that, the Holy Roman Emperor versus the Byzantine Emperor, who sees himself as Roman also, right? So there's kind of friction there. And then the religious part of this is that the bishop in Rome comes to contention with the bishops in the Byzantine Empire. So you have the lines are being drawn in the sand here, and there's clear conflict between, the Pope in Rome and the Holy Roman Emperor, and then the Byzantine emperors and the bishops of the Byzantine Empire. So we can see how all of this is kind of aligning, and these groups are kind of lining up against each other. So this situation is kind of brewing for a couple of hundred years. We saw late 700s, but now we're into the year 1054, and this friction between the two sides has kind of come to a head. So essentially, what happens is the Pope and a person called the Patriarch, which is the head of the Byzantine Church, excommunicate each other. They basically say, okay, you're kicked out of the church. And the other one says, no, you're kicked out of the church. And this results in what's called the Great Schism, which is a separation of the Christian church. And it's going to separate into two different branches of Christianity, Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. When people say they're Catholic in the United States of America, 99 out of 100 times they are referring to the Roman Catholic branch of Christianity. So there are a lot of similarities between them. They're both Christian religions, so they both believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ as the kind of the second coming, and they believe in a lot of the same religious doctrine, but there are certain differences between them, and those differences are something that you guys are going to take a look at today. This has had kind of interesting impact because these, you took a once huge religion, Christianity, and you've kind of separated it into two different pieces. So now there's kind of this fracture in the Christian church, and a group that used to be super dominant and super, super huge is now half as powerful and half the size, right? Because it's split in half, essentially. And that's kind of what ends up happening. So what we're left with is, you can see kind of with the map here, the orange territories are the Roman Catholic Church, and the eastern territories that you see here on the map, the blue, are Orthodox Christianity. So there's some differences culturally between them. The Catholics all speak Latin, and the Orthodox Christians all speak Greek. And there's some other cultural differences also. But this is kind of what we're left with when it's all said and done. This is the result of that schism. So this is where we divide the line between the two. And you could see there's parts where these two sects of Christianity intersect, and they're going to have to do some reckoning there.